found a wooden shoe in my toilet. It was clogged. What's going on, YouTube? It is Tuesday, which means we have 3 vendors that have reset, meaning that from 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, i.e. whenever you're watching this video, all the way until next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 3 vendors will have rotational items that you have a week to purchase. The first one is in a free-to-play area inside of the Infinite Archive here. As always, make sure you grab your free coins and restart with the tippy top, which is Malakast Brutal Rune Core. This lead is very annoying. It actually comes from the Imperial City. So if you didn't get this one during Mid-Year Mayhem, it drops from the upper district bosses. Now, I know my audience. My audience are a bunch of solo players who refuse to talk to anybody unless absolutely required. So the thought of going and killing an upper district boss alone in a PvP area, they might as well be throwing the One Ring into Mordor while being tempted by it. It would be very difficult. So overall, I think that this is a lead that if you're looking for the Malakast Band of Brutality, this is a fantastic one to look at, because in PvP, oftentimes this one kind of sees a little bit of meta relevance. Let's talk about why that is very briefly. Because what it does is it just gives you a flat damage increase, which is unnamed, so it stacks with everything, of 16%, but it decreases your critical damage done by 50%. So sometimes certain metas love sets like this, because if people are like very defensive, certain new sets come out that kind of give everybody a bunch of crit resistance, or people are just naturally building a bunch of crit resistance. Getting a flat damage increase is pretty good. Problem is a lot of leads and mythics out there these days give things that are a little bit better, like Sea Serpent's Chain, Satan's Seducer. But if those were to see a nerf or a change, or if there was a meta refresh, very real possibility that this goes back from like the B or the A tier, kind of in that middle tier, back to the S tier where it used to be pretty consistently, although it has also been changed as well too. If you're worried though that you may spend too many archival fortunes this week though, fear not, because this next one you just pick up from the water inside the Telvanni Peninsula. So fear not, it's relatively easy. You don't have to worry about buying this. Next up, for 15,000 archival fortunes, you could get these shoulders here, very dwarven in theme, if the Stonekeeper name wasn't kind of a giveaway that that's kind of what we were doing with them. I also don't know why my guy is mid-step here. Perfect for modeling though. But this one, 15,000 archival fortunes, it's bound to you, and it normally retails about 700,000 to 800,000. Now granted, some people would have seen that this has been listed. But yeah, I mean, we're right in the dead center of where this has been listed recently. And even if you go all the way back to its like most like crazy, period when it first came out, it was only at its highest peak at about 3 million. Now, some people might be tempted by that, think, ooh, 15,000 archival fortunes. Potentially this thing goes back up, to that millions again. But if you're worried about that, you got a good chunk of gold, I would just buy it versus actually going out and using your archival fortunes, because this is the equivalent to 3 mythic leads. This lead alone could take you 4 hours, 3 to 4 hours. So multiply that by 3, you're like 12 hours of grinding you could save yourself. Is that worth 700,000 gold? It depends, it's up to you, but that's how I always analyze these things. Next up is Clockwork City maps. Now these thankfully are a skip. Unfortunately, Clockwork City maps don't really have any juice and regoosers. No real good chase items in there that would justify 2,000 archival fortunes. I love companion equipment jewelry because it's one of the only pieces that you're guaranteed to get something that could be good. For example, if you roll for weapons and you get a sword with the healing trait, not helpful. But at least if you get the healing trait on a ring, you're like, well, I might not be making a healer, but at least down the road, I could make one. So I love rolling for these ones. I think it's the best one to gamble on. So overall, this one's a good shout. Unironically, this fragment is really annoying because you have to kill Herald Seekers, but don't buy a fragment for 7,000 archival fortunes. Next up is a memory book part 3. Now, personally, I'm privy to part 2. And then we have What's an Arcanist? Now, this book is amazing. Whenever I make a video on how to play an Arcanist, I actually just read the script from these books, so they're pretty good. Next up, we have Courage, Shock Damage, Wayfarer's Mastery. Now, the best one up here is probably Shock Damage. Close behind is Courage, though. Shock Damage is decently popular, especially because Sorks are just really good. Is it worth buying though? Probably not, unfortunately, or fortunately if you want to save money. It's a pretty common script to get. So's courage. Courage is great if you're a solo player and you need to get courage from somewhere. You gotta find the courage within yourself. But overall, both of these are skips because if you don't have these unlocked on a character already, they're going to be pretty expensive. Next up is our face art, which we see all the time. Not super interested in any face art for what would be, 140,000 archival fortunes. That's an investment, some would say. And then this next one just comes from a public dungeon. I believe this one just comes from Somerset. The first fragment you get per day is pretty much like right away instantaneous. And these fragments sell probably for 5,000 to 10,000 gold. Next up is inside the Scholarium, which is inside of Ivea, right over here. And if you've never been here before, it's actually outside of our plane of existence, right over here. Now, the reason we talk to this bad man Majama is that the scripts here rotate. Now, the stuff at the top here, these grimoires, static. These rotational. Start firstly in Veneration. Honestly, meh, bit of a skip. Magic of Steel. In this meta, who's trying to steal Magicka from somebody? You'd want to steal like their life by doing flame damage to them or doing literally anything else. Magicka Steel, not super great. Dispel, thankfully, also not a great one, but Cavalier's Charge is pretty cool, so I would encourage you to buy Cavalier's Charge. Generally, I encourage people to buy any of them that they don't have. But these ones, I mean, these are like the nosebleeds. This is like the B team of scripts. So I wouldn't even worry about these except for Cavalier's Charge just because it's cool. And then Class Mastery is static, so it's there every single week. Don't have to worry about that one. And finally, we have our Telvar vendor inside the Lambient Passage. Now, you can talk to this bad man Majama, the Telvar merchant here, and they have rotational items as well. We start actually with some gold sets. Now, this set, the Phoenix set, I just miss it. Unfortunately, I learned about this set's fate. This used to be my favorite set in the game just because it was whimsical. If you die, you basically instantly were reborn with health, stats. It was fantastic. But the problem is that the developers told me that it broke several game mechanics because dungeons became very confused. It was breaking things because you were dead and then you were like instantaneously not dead. So unfortunately, it was changed, and after it was changed, this is like a 6 out of 10 set. That's probably generous. It's probably like a 5.1. You have to get below 25% health to even proc it. Then you get a damage shield, which is not super good. Then you deal flame damage, which was not super helpful. And then it's got a minute cooldown. That's honestly probably like a 4.5. You probably will be tankier if you wore random sets than this bad boy, which is just sad. Spell Strategist is unique because when you deal damage with a light attack, you place a mark on your target for 5 seconds, granting you 460 weapon and spell damage against your marked target. This can occur once every 4 seconds. So you get 460 weapon and spell damage. You do have to be good at weaving in light attacks, every 4 to 5 seconds. It's 2, 3, and 4 of max mag weapon and spell are good. The problem is like the way that this is built is usually more for like a PvE build, like a Sergeant's Mail type build, right? The problem is that weapon and spell damage is not as good for PvE content. It's good for PvP content. So is this good for PvP? Kind of. I mean, 460 weapon and spell damage is a lot. It's got great uptime. If you're good at weaving in light attacks, I mean, this is one of the best unnamed buffs you could have, especially considering other ones have significantly longer cooldowns. So it's hard to rate. I would give it like an 8. You could build a great set with this. You could even put in sets like Malagkina, which we saw last week, when you use 2 light attacks, you deal a lot more damage. So you're encouraged to keep, light attack proccing yourself. So you could use this in some great ways. So 8 out of 10. This next one is a dungeon one, but that dungeon is just Banished Cells 1. And because it's the Pearls set, which I'm not going to pronounce because then you guys will just say, "Hey, Jake, that's not how it's said." If I don't say it, you can't tell me that I said it wrong. So when you cast an attempt to use a resource to cast a healing ability while in combat, your dominant resource is under 50%, gain 3 ultimate. Neat. Great for a lot of support utilization. Should you spend 25k Telvar to not farm Banished Cells 1? Well, if you're getting a support set, you probably already farm dungeons. This is a base game dungeon, so probably one that you're honestly just going to go do versus spend 25k Telvar. But 25k Telvar is not like a huge financial investment. I always on console, it's probably the equivalent of like 75,000 gold at most. And sometimes you can see that value kind of shine through. We have the wide barbed shank. Now, this one is interesting because it actually comes from Craglorn reward treasure chest. So it's another group content type thing that you'd have to do. More than likely, you could try to solo it, but they're a little bit difficult, but it comes from a really good lead. So if you think to yourself, Death Dealer's Feet is one of the most popular mythics in the game, very popular like Mag Wardens, Mag Sorks, etc. Max stat builds, anything that's using a max stat build, because the longer you're in combat, the higher your resources get. Should you buy it? Would you rather go out and farm Craglorn, or would you rather spend the equivalent of 75 to 100,000 gold? And that's being generous on the 12R value, in my opinion. I would probably purchase this if I had the 12R, but it depends on how bad I want it. If I was like, Jake, I'm making a Mag Sork build and I need Death Dealer's Feet, you could do this to save yourself a bunch of time if you have the resources. Because realistically, I know a lot of people save up their 12R because they're always like, there's going to be something really good eventually, but sometimes it's better to just use that resource and save you the time in the short term. 5 years from now, when the perfect lead for you comes up, you could have gotten another 25k 12R. Craglorn treasure maps, these ones are a bit, the sets there are okay, but there's really no other chase items, so this is another skip. Then we have our rings of the sets that we talked about above. Neither one of them are worth like purchasing, but if you were to use the spell strategist, I think you could still build like a good build, find people selling this for decent amounts of gold. But then we've got some interesting ones. We have Heroism, Interrupt, Bleed Damage, and Leeching Thirst. Now, of these, Heroism is my favorite. Being able, listen, the in-combat bug, I don't even look at it as a bug anymore. I just look at it as infinite heroism. In Cyrodiil, my ultimate is always regenerating. My Death Dealer's Feet is always proc. To utilize the game mechanics to your advantage. And heroism only gives you ultimate when you're in combat. But guess what? You always are in PvP, in combat. So I love it. The best one in my opinion. These will cost more though if you don't have them already, so keep that in mind. Heroism, Interrupt, Bleed Damage, Leeching Thirst. Heroism is the standout. Interrupt is okay. Bleed Damage is okay. And Leeching Thirst for its value is okay, but it's going to be really expensive if you don't have it unlocked on another character, so keep that in mind. And finally, we finish on Fragment of the Baron. Now, if you can guess where Fragment of the Baron comes from, you're great, because this comes from Baron Zodris from the Cauldron. And unfortunately, if you do want to get this style, you're going to have to do quite a few different things. You're going to have to farm Sunspire, which some of you who are a little more antisocial, that's going to be a little bit difficult, unfortunately. But you could always wait to see if it comes up, because the Cauldron is probably the second most annoying thing in here. City of Ash 2, I mean, come on, not going to be too bad. And then Volcanic Vents, Public Dungeons, Delves, easy peasy lemon squeezy. So maybe you want to spend, the fragments in here so that way you don't have to farm the dungeon. But if you are willing to random queue into the Cauldron, which is decently farmed, you won't need to purchase this fragment because it's a 100% drop rate. But everyone, thank you guys so much again for watching. As always, we're doing our 3 giveaway drawings. All you need to do to enter is leave a like and a comment on as many videos as you want. Each one will enter you into that drawing. Second thing is just make sure you're subscribed/follow on Twitch and Twitter for an additional drawing on that one. And the third thing is look for a hidden word be flashed upon screen. If you're the first person to find and comment that word, you will win. Thank you guys one last time, and I'll catch you later. Bye, guys.
You better remember to like and subscribe to Jakeclips. Or you should. I might have to pluck your eyes if you don't. Or, better yet, I'll skip rope with your entrails. Do it now. Subscribe. Ta-ta. Off with you.